Muli po magandang hapon, Pilipinas, Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao. Ako po rin po inyong kasama, Eli Saludar.
At ito naman po, babati muli sa ating mga kababayan na hanggang ngayon, hirap na hirap pa rin. Ito po si former Secretary Jim Paras, dito sa ating programa, Iparas kay Paras. Magandang hapon ulit.
At si Ado Paglinawan po, nagpupugay na naman ang isang magandang araw sa inyong lahat.
Well, mga kababayan, hindi namamatay itong issue ng West Philippine Sea. At mayroong mga talagang nagtatapang-tapangan dyan na gusto talaga magkagera ang ating bansa sa China. Talagang ginigiit nila itong issue na talagang pag-aarian talaga natin yung West Philippine Sea. But, alam mo, hindi nila naintindihan na ang binabasihan ng China ay hindi UNCLOS. Ang binabasihan ng China is the General Rules on International Law. That, well, ako, tingin ko dyan, yung sinasabing might is right. At ito, ginawa na rin ito ng British. Doon sa Argentina, yung Falkland. Kalayo-layo ng Argentina sa England, in-invade yung ng British yung Falkland. So, maski adjacent yun sa Argentina, but they occupy that island. So, in other words, ang solusyon nito talaga ay mahinahon na agreement. And Marcos sa umpisa, Eli, was in the right track Dumalaw siya doon, nakipag-usap siya kay Xi Jinping, kinausap niya yung mga businessmen at nagyabang siya na may nakalap daw tayo ng mga mga commitments, no? Mga investment commitments and so on and so forth. Whether that was true or not, sooner or later, magiging totoo yan kung talagang masigasig ang ating pakikipagkaibigan sa China. Unang-una, ang China, mga kababayan, is really, is really giving us business, Tapos mayroong iba dyan, sasabihin, ay porque gusto itong mga tao na ito, pinipraise ang China or kinakampihan ang China, karamihan po sa ating mga kababayan, kung titingnan mo yung survey, 7% lang ang interesado dito sa West Philippine Sea. Sa issue. Why? Because ang katapat niyan, gera which we cannot fight. Ito nga, pakinggan natin ang ating dating Pangulo. From time and time again, President Rodrigo Duterte then was asked so many questions. Until now, tinatanong pa rin sa kanya kung ano ba ang palagay niya diyan sa South China Sea issue. Ito po, pakinggan natin si dating Pangulong Duterte.
Well, let me just be very frank. Pagprangkahan na lang tayo dito at walang bulahan na istorya. Alam mo, this is a contested area. Yung pangyayari dyan. And this has been going on since time immemorial. Hindi lang sa panahon ni Marcos, ngayon, panahon ko, may bungguan na talaga dito. Near collision or a mishap dito. Somewhere, bangka, bunggo, whatever. Ito ay dahil meron tayong controversy. Alitan, to say the least, parang kakainisan. Ngayon, bakit ito nangyayari? Kasi naghahanap lang talaga ito ng rason para magkaroon ng issue. So that it will be brought to light and then maybe force government, either the Philippine side with the concurrence of China or with the pressure coming from the United States and the rest of the allies to force a meeting or a talk so that these things can be solved. Hindi ito nadadala ng day-to-day mishaps. Alam mo, araw-araw to nababasa natin. Araw-araw, every time I think I come up here to talk about in this program, nandito talaga itong issue na itong West Philippine Sea. It cannot be resolved. It cannot be it cannot be we come up with a setup na may daanan tayo. There are the parameters where we can travel, we can pass by and travel along these contested areas. Talagang magkakaroon ng ano yan. Dito, paglakad mo, you sail in this area, suddenly this ship will appear in the horizon and it would maybe cause a near collision. Hindi ito nag-iiba. Talagang ganito itong alita na ito. It cannot be solved by just publishing every incident every day or shout to the world that there is something wrong every time there is a near collision or a collision or something that is a source of a trouble. Alam natin nagbubuluhan lang tayo dito eh. China, pati ang Pilipinas, pati tayo, with due respect to General Anyo, he's a good friend of mine. He was my, I think, I forgot his position, but he was also holding a very important position in my administration. Alam namin ito na laro ito ng panahon. Kung sino lang ang makalamang dito at we are waiting for the big bang na magkaroon talaga ng issue, magpatayan marami, then it becomes it would trigger and it would become a serious problem for everybody. Now, we have always been talking about our alliances with the West, especially America. Dinidikit natin doon sa US Treaty, US RP Treaty of Mutual Defense Pact, which was signed in the 1950s, that an attack of one nation, the Philippines, would be considered an attack of America. At in-attack yung Amerika, mutual eh. We will also go to their side. It's a very long shot na mangyari yan. We do not have the wherewithals. We do not have the ships to go there. Though we have the soldiers, but if I were the president, I would not be sending any Filipino there. Bahala na kayo dyan. Kayong malalaking iwan naman yan yung kami.
So, mga kababayan, time and time again, tinatanong ng ating dating Pangulo, ang response lang niya talaga ay, we cannot help it kasi talagang ganyan na yung issue. Okay, mayroong arbitral tribunals decision na ini-insist ng mga iba nating kababayan, yung nagmamarunong na ito daw ay panalo tayo. Pero, alam mo, kung hindi lang tayo naive, ano bang klaseng panalo? Kasi, pag nanalo ka sa isang boxing, sa manok. Dalawa yung nag-aaway. Dito, isa lang tayo eh. Hindi sumali yung... Paano tayo magbuboxing kung ang kalabang isa eh, hindi man lang nag-participate? So,
Hindi, sa manok siya ang magbibitaw lang.
oh, isa lang nagbibitaw, ha? Oh, yung kalaban ay umayaw, lumabas sa galyera. Ha? So, how can you pronounce victory, no? That's a point of view of China. So, at saka yung pinapairal natin yung UNCLOS. Pero hindi lang naman ang UNCLOS, mga kababayan, ang nag-govern ng relasyon among nations. Ha? Apakalawak ng mga batas, ha? Na nakakalap through the years as part of the international law. Ha? Oh. So, hindi natin masasabi na tama tayo, sila mali, kasi sila, from their point of view, mali naman din tayo. So ano nga ang sinasabi ni President Duterte? There must be a reasonable dialogue. Try until we will be able to reach conclusion. Ito po, nag-umpisa na ito sa panahon ni Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo. We had a very strong relationship with China then. Then this was followed by Duterte. Nagkaroon lang naman tayo ng palso dito dahil nga nasulsulan tayo ng Amerikano kaya nawala yung Scarborough Shoal. Ang panahon ni Noynoy Aquino. Naguyo tayo ng mga kano. So, yun po. At sinasabi ni President Duterte, paano na yan? Kung sooner or later, giit tayo ng giit dyan, baka may Big Bang at magkaroon lang ng barilan dyan at lalaki, magiging gera yan. Kaya ba natin? Hindi naman natin sinasabing kaya natin. Sinasabi natin, nandyan yung Amerikano. Pero, nung una pa lang, sinasabi na ng dating Pangulong Marcos, ito, pakinggan natin si dating President Marcos. Nung una pa lang panahon, winawarningan na tayo ni dating President Marcos, yung bright na
Senior.
Marcos na senior. Ito, medyo questionable yung utak na itong anak. Pero itong tatay, very clear ang utak niya nung matingkad pa siya. Ay ito pong sinasabi niya sa ating mga kababayan. Ito, pakinggan natin si President Marcos.
The United States is not necessarily bound to immediately react because the provision of the Mutual Defense Pact is that you will immediately take steps as is necessary to meet the contingency in accordance with your constitutional processes. What does that mean? That means that you go to the Senate and the House of Representatives. What does that mean? That means delay while we are dying there.
So very pragmatic. That means delay while we are dying. And that is exactly what's going to happen kung giit tayo ng giit dyan. Pakita mo nga yung barko na nagigiitan. Ulitin natin. Sa katagalan, giit ng giit, ay pagka nagkainitan yan, at gagamit na ng baril, makikialam na yung mga armed forces ng bawat bansa, there will be a big bang. Now, kung bibirahin tayo kaagad ng China ng mga missiles, ano po ang sagot natin? Siyempre, it will trigger the mutual defense. But Marcos was just saying, it takes time. Ito nga lang yung tulong nila sa Ukraine.
Ngayon, no?
Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa nabotohan ang Ukraine kasi ayaw ng mga ibang senador. And yet, alay nila yung Ukraine. Mayroon din silang pact dyan, may treaty din yan. And itong Israel, Pinopropose pa lang ang tulong sa Israel, nagkakapatayan na, dami ng patay doon sa Hamas at saka sa Israeli side. And yet, the Senate is proposing a big amount of money. The House is only proposing through their Speaker, Johnson, 14.5 billion. So, tayo, kung naiipit tayo, ubos tayo. Tingnan mo. And yet, there are certain people na pinupulaan nila ang mga kapwa Pilipino na traidor daw. Tulad ng sinasabi ni dating Pangulong Marcos na dating Pangulong Duterte na sinasabi niya, matagal na yan eh. Araw-araw mayroong ganong incident, panahon pa niya bilang presidente. Pero yung iba, karamihan ng Pilipino, 93% of Filipinos are not so much very keen on this issue. Di ba, Do? Anong
Hindi
masasabi?
interesado.
Unang-una, Kong, naresolba na ito nung panahon ni Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. Nagkaroon na ng mga pag-uusap. At dahil nga doon sa mga nabanggit mo tungkol doon sa Scarborough Shoal, na medyo ginulangan tayo ng Amerikano at nag-feed ng misinformation, hindi tuloy nagkaintindihan, umurong yung BRP Gregorio del Pilar. At since then, ay in control na ng Scarborough Shoal at China. Pero may kasunduan noon pa. At yan pinapatunayan ni Voltaire Gasmen. Kasi Voltaire Gasmen, ang Secretary of National Defense noon, na may kasunduan dyan, at yan ay pinablish sa Daily Inquirer, na hindi magdadala tayo dyan ng construction and building materials, walang permanent structures kayong pwedeng gawin dyan. At yan, nakasulat na inamin ni Voltaire Gasmen sa isang Philippines Daily Inquirer. Ngayon, dumating tayo kay Duterte, nakagulo ng grabe nung panahon ni Noynoy. Let's fast forward tayo. Nung panahon ni Duterte, nagkaroon ng kasunduan dyan. No? Nung magpunta si Presidente Duterte sa China. And one of this was to establish bilateral consultative mechanisms. At bago mag-COVID, nagkakaroon na ng 5 bilateral consultative mechanism meetings. At ito ay nagresulta na sa 2 very constructive na programa. Tinutulungan tayo ng China para ma-enforce yung tinatawag nating sovereign rights, no? At allowing the fishermen to go back and fish. Yun ang una. Pangalawa, yung joint oil and gas exploration, kung saan ang China pa ay nag-propose ng 60% ang magiging share ng Pilipinas. In other words, yung hindi pagkakaunawaan, nagkasundo na. Dahil yung nasa taas, bumaba, at yung nasa ibaba, umakyat, nag-usap.
At mind you, this kind of arrangement continued. And in fact, this is the basis, mga kababayan, ito po yung basihan natin, na nagpunta si Marcos doon at in-entertain, nag-state visit si Marcos, in-entertain, nagkaroon ng mga economic, exchanges, mga businessmen, nandoon mga businessmen from the Philippines and so on, nagkakano. At samantalang, pag uwi ni Marcos, he was very proud of announcing this and that, bigla na lang nabulaga tayo na pumasok na ang Amerika bigla. Punta lang si Marcos sa Amerika, nagbago na ang ihip ng hangin at ang very aggressive na after that ay itong ating Philippine Coast Guard. So, after that, mayroon ng mga matatapang na Pilipino nag-aakusa din sa kapwa Pilipino na traidor as if sila ay talagang patriotic. Ito, mayroong isang columnist
Si, ano?
na treason in disguise, China apologies claiming to be pro-Philippines. Hindi maganda ito, Mr. Contreras. Ikaw, ano ba naman kung sabihin namin, magkano bang tinanggap mo rin sa mga Amerikano para sumulat against Filipinos who are just concerned na hindi magkagera? Just because maraming Pilipino na nakakaintindi na wala tayong kakayahan at pagka nagkagera, tayo ang mapipinsala sa sabihin mo kaagad na ano man tawag nito, mga traidor sa ano. Ikaw, kung malaman din natin na tumanggap ka sa mga ang daming mga association at mga organization na ino-organize ng Amerikano at isa ka sa mga allegedly tumanggap dyan. Kaya ka sumusulat at lumalaban ka sa mga kapwa Pilipino mo at hindi mo binibigyan ng respeto yung kanilang opinion. Masama ba yan? Maganda ba para sa iyo? Wag kang gaganon-ganon, Mr. Contreras. Ano masasabi mo diyan sa
basahin
Contreras?
natin muna.
Basahin mo.
It is utterly disingenuous to label those who criticize China as American lackeys when the one saying so is a pro-China mouthpiece. Yeah, that's a grievous accusation, and it is intellectual dishonesty to claim to be pro-Philippines. Yet the immediate reaction to the aggression by China Coast Guard towards our ships, which were just performing resupply operations near the Ayungin Shoal, which is within our exclusive economic zone, is to accuse our forces of engaging in a false flag operation. One prominent social media enabler even used the phrase "bangga me" or "bump me," thereby suggesting that we intentionally position our ships to be hit by China's Coast Guard. Kung for 24 years, since 1999, panahon pa ni ERAP, nag-resupply mission na dyan. Pero bakit yung ngayon, dalawang barko ang lumalabas dyan at yung isa pinalulusot ng China, yung isa ayaw palusutin? Now, Mr. Contreras, please be transparent to us. Ano ba ang laman ng isang Philippine vessel na tinataboy? Yung una, winater cannon para umalis. And this time, ay tinaboy. At sa pagtaboy sa kanya, makikita sa video by our own naked eyes na pumararil siya doon sa Chinese Coast Guard at inuunahan niya. And eventually, nag-minor yung Chinese Coast Guard, umabante siya, sinide-swipe niya pakanan. Yung Chinese Coast Guard, in violation of the rules of the road, of international collision regulation. Ayan ang explain sa atin. Bakit hanggang ngayon, 1 week, inutusan sila ni Marcos na magsabit ng report? O asan ang report ng Coast Guard ngayon? I-publish mo, Mr. President, ang report sa iyo. Dahil kami ay 2020 ang aming mga mata, kitang-kita namin yung unang insidente, Philippine vessel ang nag-sideswipe. Mula sa kaliwa, kinap. Kung hindi mag-minor yung Chinese Coast Guard and took precaution, wasak yung Philippine vessel.
Pakita natin yung collision.
Yung pangalawa, inatrasan naman nung Coast Guard vessel, yung fishing vessel ng China. Tingnan natin mismo. Ayan. Who is traversing from left, which is the port side, to the other side? Ang rules of engagement dyan, kailangan malayo bago ka kakat. Yan, right in front. It was the Philippine vessel that hit the Chinese vessel. Ayan yung sinasabi ko. Nakaparallel siya.
Tapos palapit. Yung palapit doon.
Tapos lumalapit siya. Tingnan nyo, dumadiagonally palapit siya sa Chinese vessel. That is a dangerous maneuver Kaya yung Coast Guard nag-minor, took precautions. At nung ma-overtake ka niya, kinat niya. Oh, kailangan pa bang i-drawing yan? Kailangan,
Pero
kailangan pa bang
ang
memorizing yan?
pakiusap lang nating programa ay huwag tayong yung padalos-dalos na mag-aakusa. I mean, you may not be referring to our program because we are very precise in our statements na ang kinakalungkot natin ay yung aabot ang isang panahon, yung sinasabi ni dating Pangulong Duterte na sa skirmish dyan ay may isang nagpapaputok and it will create a world war. A world war or gera.
Hot war.
Puputok na lang yan dyan and you are carrying the whole nation at isang bomba lang tayo dyan. I mean, it's not laughing matter, Mr. Contreras. At ito pa, isa. Ito, in-special mention na ni Presidente, yung amo nito, na dati niyang trabahante, si Secretary Anyo, na wag padalos-dalos. Kasi dati, Anyo used to ally with President Duterte.
Sa DILG nun eh.
As DILG Secretary. Ngayon, nag-appoint na lang si Anyo. I used to respect this guy He was one of the brilliant guy of the cabinet of the President. And yet, ngayon,
Tahimik siya.
na-appoint na lang, iba na ang utak. Hindi niya sinusunod yung wisdom at saka common sense ng ating dating Pangulo, President Duterte. At itong spokesman niya, na sidekick niya dati sa DILG, kung ano-ano pinagsasabi. Itong si Malaya, Jonathan Malaya, ito pakinggan na natin.
We may have won the arbitral ruling, but the question always was, who will enforce this? As you mentioned, we enforce it in our way. The problem is, hindi po ito kinikilala ng China. But my question is, when you look at the UNCLOS, and I will read it, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, defines as exclusive economic zone as generally extending to 200 nautical miles from the shore, within which the coastal state has the right to explore, exploit, and the responsibility to conserve and manage both living and non-living resources. And let me highlight that there, as you see it, again, pinag-uusapan po natin dito 200 nautical miles mula po sa Palawan. So that is our EEZ. Ayungin is 105 nautical miles. China's nearest area is 600. So my question is, with regards to the UNCLOS, how much further can we push this? Can we defend the 200 nautical miles by saying that's part of our 200 nautical miles under the UNCLOS, and you must comply? I think that's what I'm trying to say, sir. Pwede ho ba yun na para sa kanila, di kami kasali dyan sa UNCLOS?
Well, they are parties to the UNCLOS because they signed UNCLOS. And the 2016 arbitral ruling is very clear that the decision applies to both the Philippines and China. No, because China is saying we did not participate in the arbitral proceedings in The Hague.
Yes.
But UNCLOS provides for that provision as well. Its decisions are binding to both parties if the conditions of the convention are followed, and if copies of the proceedings are sent regularly to the other party. And we gave copies. No, the tribunal, in fact, gave copies to the Chinese embassy in The Hague about all of the positions. And there were public statements made by China, which were considered by the arbitral tribunal. So China cannot claim that they did not take part. No, they did take part, and they are parties to the arbitral ruling.
Okay, anong masasabi mo? Ikaw,
Alam-
ito, nagpapa-expert ito si Malaya. Hindi naman
Alam
to
niyo,
expert
ako
yan,
eh.
Pero itong expert natin.
Ang maestro.
Oh, maestro.
Ako'y napapahiya dito.
Sagutin mo yung
Okay.
Malaya na yan.
After 7 years in foreign service, hindi ko akalain na may mga Pilipino na ganito that will be saying things, no, from the top of their head. Obvious na obvious, hindi siya nag-aral. Hindi niya alam ang sitwasyon. No? Wala siyang alam sa international law. Wala siyang alam sa rules of engagement ng arbitration. Klarong-klaro, na iisa lamang ang partido dahil hindi nga nag-participate ang China dito. So, paano niya sasabihin na yung ruling will apply to the non-participant? Oh, paano mo sasabihin?
At saka alam mo, isa pang ano dyan, sinasabi, very simplistic lang naman yung inaano ni Webb eh. Sinasabi ni Webb, ano daw yun ang rules ng UNCLOS at the Ayungin Shoal is within the 200 mile. But the fact, even if member ang China sa UNCLOS, China is arguing on a different point of view. Yun ang pag-aralan natin. Ano bang argument ng China? They may be a member of UNCLOS, but there are massive rules and regulations under international law that is applicable as far as China is concerned. Unang-una, we can protest. Kung hindi sila magano, we can protest the United Nations. Dalhin natin. Okay. Pero China is a member of the Security Council.
UN.
Kung anong
Permanent
enforcement
member.
permanent member. Anong enforcement ng UN yan? Binibito lang yan ng China. Kasi every country is entitled to one vote. And there's also Russia. So, let's be realistic. Hindi na tayo kana dyan. May mga ibang senador dyan, dalhin daw sa United Nations. So, let it be. Then, find out for yourselves at the end of the day that we're wasting time. So, the old adage or the old saying pa rin is, what is compelling as far as we are concerned is dialogue. Continue. Kaso, ang nangyari, mga kababayan, tayo rin ang fault because itong Pangulong Marcos Jr. nagbago ng kanyang maniobra. Imbis itutuloy ang dialogue, ang makikipagsuyuan sa dito sa China, nagpunta na siya doon at nakipag-usap na siya doon. Pagdating ng ibang araw, bumaliktad at mayroon ngayong allegations na nabigyan yata di umano doon sa Asia Week mayroong $61 billion question. At nagkaroon yata ng bigayan. Kaya baliktad ngayon ang foreign policy ni Marcos. It's no longer a friend to everyone and an enemy to none. Ngayon, it's a friend to one and an enemy to one. So, ngayon, yun ang foreign policy natin. We are now an enemy of China and a friend to the United States. Oh.
They violating our constitutional provision of independent foreign policy.
Oh. So, yan, continue with your, doon sa kay Malaya.
Oh, tsaka dito, ang sinasabi ninyo, you're supposed to be National Security Advisor. Ang definition niyo, pati ang definition ninyo ng national interest ay nagbago na rin. Dahil sumusunod kayo kay Marcos Jr. Ang ibig nyo nang sabihin, yung definition ni Hermogenes Hesperon na NSA ni Duterte ay traidor, unpatriotic. Kayo ang bumabali. Dahil doon lamang kayo pumapabor sa 7% na sinabi ni Congressman Paras, na about the sovereignty issue, 7%.
Ang interesado lang dyan, si Malaya, si Tariela, at saka si Gibo Teodoro. But the multitude of our Filipinos are more interested kung may laman ba yung tiyan nila. Mayroon ba silang trabaho? Yung inflation ba ay nakaka-apekto sa kanilang araw-araw na pamumuhay? That is the issue now. But Marcos is so concerned with the issue. Why? Because there is now an allegation na tinutulak siya ng kano dahil nagkaroon ng under-the-table deal. Di umano, 61 billion according to
Dollars!
Pakita mo nga. Tingnan natin.
61 billion
Dollars.
dollars. So, times 50 yan.
Yan lumabas ito sa Asia Week. In the latest edition of Asia Week,
Which is not
the magazine draws from many inside sources the reason why Marcos Jr. made a 180-degree in foreign policy and turned against China. PBBM made a Faustian bargain with the Americans to reclaim 61 billion of Marcos Jr.'s asset or estate. Whether that is true or not, but
hanggang ngayon, wala pang statement yan na
it would seem na may katotohanan ito kasi kamakailan lang nakipag-usap siya kay Xi Jinping. All praises. Sa speech niya, pinipraise niya ang China at Philippines na maganda ang relasyon. Tapos after a month or so, baliktad na siya. Ngayon, pinayagan na niyang Amerika, binayaran tayo ng $1 billion, $100 million, and so on and so forth. Pinayagan yung EDCA na maglagay ng maraming bases dito, lalo na sa Cagayan.
Sabi nga namin.
So, these are all indicating that there's something fishy here inside, under the table, Marcos, you should be transparent with the Filipino. Aminin mo. Okay lang naman sa Pilipino yan. Magkipag-deal ka pa sa ibalik mo lang yung $61 billion sa Pilipino. We don't even mind kung ipapasok mo sa Marlica Fund. Di ba, Eli? Ano masasabi mo, paling Eli dyan?
Yun nga ang hinala dito sa di umano na $61 billion para sa estate ni Yumaong Ferdinand Marcos Sr. Papasok sa Marlica. Kasi pag pumasok na dito sa Marlica, nalinis na, nalaban na yung pera.
At saka, mga kababayan, with due respect, hindi po namin sinisiraan si Marcos Jr. at saka yung kanyang may bahay. Na yun daw ang allegation, na yun ang nagne-negotiate nito. Ay karami-rami nung panahon na natalsik si Marcos at panahon ni Ramos, panahon ng Aquino, panahon ni ERAP, ay umiiral yung paghahabol ng Marcos wealth. Kung tanungin mo yung mga PCGG, napakarami pa ang recoverable. Pero wala tayong balita na. Ngayon kasi siya na ang presidente at saka siyempre nagsisip-sip na yung PCGG. Ang mga justices diyan nagsisip-sip na, pinagdi-dismiss na yung mga kaso against Marcos. Against yung fight against Marcos, recovery of Marcos wealth, pinagdi-dismiss na ng mga korte ngayon. Ano masasabi natin? So, natural, it can create doubt. Lalo na there is a complete turnaround of his foreign policy. So, yun po ang masasabi natin dyan. Tapos, ito, nakakatawa. Mayroon pang isa dito, itong si Paring Gibo. Dati, lakas inyusi dito, pero after na wala na siya, after the election na he was rejected by the Filipino people, biglang nag-fade away. Pero maraming salita na may mga nabibili daw mga assets, bahay and so on. At maraming nagko-complain na mga kasama ko sa lakas noon na last hour hindi na daw dineliver yung campaign funds. That's just a mere allegation. Hindi natin mapoprove yan, except I can only share the sentiments of my co-lakas members at the time. But that was a long time ago. And true enough, he was really rejected by the Filipino people. Ang nanalo noon si Noynoy Aquino. So,
panoorin nga natin, tignan nga natin ulit yung
tingnan
billboard
natin yung billboard.
sa GA Tower.
Ayan palakihin natin. Ayan if we don't stop them, China is going to creep into what is within our own sovereignty jurisdiction. Our sovereign rights and within our territory. Ayan.
Ayan, abogado yan, Pero gumagamit siya ng interchangeable meanings. Ang sovereign jurisdiction mo, teritoryo mo. Pero hindi yan sovereign rights. Those are conflicting terms.
Yeah, you only have sovereign rights within your EEC. You have sovereignty over your territory, which is 12 nautical miles from a shore. Alam mo, nakakatawa nga ito. Parang hindi mistisong inject ito si Gibo Kuwangko your name speaks for yourself. Kuwangko is Chinese derived name. So you have Chinese blood. Now you are accusing your forefathers long time ago
Of creeping.
Kaya mga Chinese Gibo, mga kamag-anak mo, matagal na naggumapang sa Pilipinas. Kaya nga nandito ka, pinanganak ka Nakuwang ko
At isang lola mo, ginapang yung pondo ng Katipunan. Na girlfriend daw ni Antonio Luna. Nasa ka ngayon? Alam mo, relax lang kayo. Huwag kayo nagpapanik. Halata nagpapanik na kayo
Hindi, alam mo, well, maybe in a way, pero alam mo, itong mga nagdadaldal ngayon, I don't know, kung may katotohanan yan, ang daming mga association or organization organized by funds of the United States. So, we don't know how this goes. Tara, pumuputak-putak itong mga tao ngayon. Then accuse Filipinos who are patriotic na ayaw magkagera, ayaw mamatay ang mga kapwa nila, ay sasabihin na traidor. Sila na ginigiit nila at magkagera tayo, ay hindi sila traidor.
So, nag-shift na, Congressman, ang takbo ng
mentally
narrative.
dishonest itong mga kumag na ito.
Alam mo, nag-shift na ang build. Tapos sabi niya, promise niya continuity sa BBM. From build to build more. Ang nangyari, bumalik sa BBB. Base. At kami ay nangangahang at gusto
Base meaning EDCA base.
EDCA bases. Kami ay nagpapahiwatig lang sa inyo.
Mga flower base.
Kasi
Kasi maraming flower base yata kinocultivate dyan pulburon base, flower base.
Pero ito, sagutin mo ito.
ang ultimate kasi niyan, delikado. Kasi yung BBB maging bam.
Yun.
Yun.
Pero ito, may
Bang ng China.
may binabanggit
ito,
ang
Jerry.
sagutin ni Ricardo, yung sabi ng Rappler, how pro-China propaganda is seeded online in the Philippines. Ito, a pro-China network on Facebook has been spreading propaganda and disinformation for years. The actors in this community are getting away with it by claiming academic expertise and legitimacy. Sige, anong masasabi mo dyan?
Well, ang masasabi ko dyan, simple lang. At kami, issues.
Pasa mo yan para maano ni...
We argue on the basis of issues. Kayo, you go to personalities and name tagging and name calling. Explain nga ng Rappler kung saan napunta yung 187 million ng Umidyar Network. Explain nga ng Rappler kung saan napupunta yung million in US dollars na donation sa kanila ng National Endowment for Democracy. Oh, kayo nga, you are the ones who are accountable.
Pinagsasabi ng Rappler na, anong sabi niya, Eli? Marami daw sa social media who are advocating, nagpapakalat
ng maling impormasyon, propaganda.
yung allegations pa lang yan.
Disinformation.
Sila talagang hindi na allegation. Silang nagpapakalat talaga ng propaganda para sa Amerika against China. There's no doubt, it's not an allegation, which is a truth because according to Ado, pagka-ari lang yung Rappler, di ba, Ado?
Yeah, natalo na nga sila sa Court of Appeals yan, korte na nagsasabi.
Sino ba yung pangalan nun? Yung kumpanya na bumili ng shares of stocks? Naglagay ng shares of stock?
Philippine Depository Receipts. Binili po ng Umidyar Network. Yan pong Umidyar ang nagdala ng gera sa Ukraine noong 2014 through the Orange Revolution and slowly up to...
And this is the entity that bought into the ownership or shares of ownership of Rappler.
Nagkamali sila dahil po...
Natural, itong Rappler, talagang magkakalat ng lagim to protect the interests of the United States.
Okay. So, maraming salamat po sa inyo.